At the table up here, We have a sign-up sheet in the front at the table. We're taking up 2 Senate resolutions, and this is the first time they'll be heard. We can do that in the full committee. So if anybody wishes to speak, please feel free to sign up. Thank you. We will open with our morning prayer. Thank you.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, just thank you for this day and for all your many blessings. Just thank you for bringing us all here safe today. Just be with us as we go through this meeting and just lead us and guide us and help us to better manage your natural resources that you've given us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So we have our senator here today.
Great to be with you, Madam Chair.
Joy having you before the committee. You're one of our first sightings of a senator, so
Hey.
we're really excited
Not
to see you over here.
It's great to be with you, and I'm sorry you didn't get a better picture.
I don't believe anybody's, if you'll look at that sign-up pad there, are there any signatures?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, then Senator, let's start with Senate Resolution 152. And to bring the committee back up to date, I carried the exact same resolution on the House side, so it's already been vetted by our committee. We've had requests for specific names of different associations to be named in the resolution, but just in consultation, we realized it's best to keep it general, and then the specifics can be done as we know that forestry and ag need a seat at this table, so there's no question about that. But truthfully, if we started listing one, there are going to be 25 others, and so, but we could not move forward without forestry and ag on this resolution. So, having said that, Senator, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, one of the things, and the committee members, I hope you realize that the reason that me and my honorable counterpart in the House decided that this was important was there's been some court rulings dealing with stream buffers and what's going on. Said about rested vegetation. Said we had a very good informative meeting with Director Dunn, and former Director Reheis. Said regarding some of the language and how rested vegetation came into the being. Said but there's several things that we want to take the let's study it and take a rational approach to how we deal with stream buffers and what's going on. So that's what Senate Resolution 152 does. I believe y'all passed the exact same resolution in the House unanimously. For me, I'm glad to work with my counterpart, Chairman Smith, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
I don't see any questions. The other part of the resolution is delving into making sure we protect private property rights as well as we go forward. So I see number 26.
Just at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
It's the proper time.
I move to pass Senate Bill 183.
Second?
Oops. He said Senate Bill 183.
Oh.
Senate Resolution 152.
Do you know he has us so trained for everything he carries because he is just the automaton bill carrier in the House. We just take him at whatever he says. So
I
we
appreciate
caught
that.
you in an error. That's pretty good.
I appreciate that.
I'm sure it wasn't an error, but I'll go get that bill too.
If the senator doesn't stop while he's ahead, I may withdraw the motion.
And we have a second. So is there any further discussion? Do I hear all those in favor, please signify. This is Senate Resolution 152. Please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? You have your resolution, Senator.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
then Senate Resolution 224 is the next one, and we have not debated this at all in our committee, so just to let you know. So please present Senate Resolution 224.
And I'll try to go into a little bit more detail on this one. One of the things that we're talking about here is LC 401421, and many of y'all know that there's about 60 local governments in the state that are currently charging a stormwater fee. And for those of you that live in an area where you don't see those stormwater fees or you don't know what they are, it's a little unusual. A lot of times they get nicknamed a rain tax or something along those lines. But what's happened is that because of some federal requirements with MS4 and coming on down to the state, local governments are looking for ways to cover the cost of the compliance with MS4 and to manage stormwater issues in their local jurisdiction. To me, I'm not opposed to stormwater fees. I think, you know, and I'll pick on the city of Athens, which is, as many of y'all know, the home of the University of Georgia. Said there's a tremendous amount of state and federal properties there in Athens, tons of tax exempt properties. Said when we start looking around at Athens, if you're a landowner or taxpayer in Athens, and you start thinking, wait a minute, they're going to charge me a stormwater fee. If you realize it from one perspective, that if they're not charging a stormwater fee, which they can charge to tax exempt properties, whether it be state, federal, or civic church type properties, then you're looking at it and saying, hey, I'm the only one here paying, and I'm paying for everybody else's stormwater issues. So from a perspective of, does a stormwater fee make sense? Yeah, if you're the only taxpayer in town and everybody else is government, then this is a way to help spread that cost against other property owners and other properties in the community. On the same token, I had a constituent over in the east side of Athens that he was a farmer, been farming this piece of property for about, since the mid-50s. Said and what was kind of interesting, he had about a 10-acre lake with about 2 feet of freeboard, which is a lot of storage capacity on it. Now, pretty much all the water from his farm was going on into this lake. Then adjacent property owners said a mobile home park, subdivision, a lot of streets and drainage went into his property. So really what this gentleman had was a regional stormwater detention facility. He was a huge benefit to their stormwater program because he captured and held that stormwater and slowly released it over time for the benefit of their stormwater system. So I met with he first contacted me and he said, hey, I don't want to pay the stormwater fee. Said I pay my taxes every year. Said, what's the deal with the stormwater fee? So I met with him. We looked at his farm. I referred him to a consulting engineer. Said because they had a program for credits. One of the things as we analyzed what was going on over there, I said, well, surely you've got enough credits because of the tremendous asset he is to their stormwater program, where they're really, he should be wiped clear of any stormwater fees. They submitted the math. I met with the county manager, their stormwater management program. Everybody was involved, and they said, oh no, our fee is based on 3 components. We have a quality, we have a quantity, we have a base charge. Well, on the quality fee, they said because he's in a farm management plan, we're not going to charge you based on the degradation of the water. Said for the quantity, because you have a pond, we're not going to charge you. But they said something that was very troubling for me, and that was that everybody has to pay this base fee. Everybody has to pay a fee. And long before I became an engineer, I did take an accounting class, and I think most everybody understands that you have assets and liabilities in the world. Said, well, he's a tremendous asset to their stormwater program. And for me, I'm looking at it and saying, something's wrong here. So I reached out to my partners with ACCG and GMA. That's the Association of County Commissioners and the Georgia Municipal Association. Many of y'all know I spent 20 years managing local governments, 2 cities and 1 county over the last 2 decades before I became in the Senate. So for me, I looked at what we were doing, and pretty much universally, every one of the 60 local governments that charge a stormwater fee, if you have a piece of property that doesn't have any impervious surface, they don't charge a fee. Now, think about it. You've got a timberland area, or you've got a pasture, or you've got a cotton field. If it rains hard enough, water's coming off that property. So when you start looking, we know that we've got and I don't care whether it's a 1 acre site or a 100 acre site. If there's no impervious surface, they're not charging a fee. So we go over here and we look and we say, okay, now let's just say that you build a new manufacturing facility, you build a new retail establishment, maybe it's an auto dealership, whatever it may be, but you're putting a lot of impervious surface out there. Said well, one of the things that I noticed was that, if you go do that today, I hope you'll go visit some of these sites where, you might have, and I'll just pick on Walmart, because in the discussion of this, said one of the folks that reached out to me was the city of Griffin. And they were the first municipality in the state, first local government in the state that passed a stormwater fee. Said Dr. Keller down there in Griffin he did his PhD work on stormwater fees. So I asked him, I said, well, Dr. Keller said, what was the last big thing that came into Griffin? He said, well, it was a super Walmart. So when you go down there and you say, okay, well, Dr. Keller, now did Walmart build a detention pond? He said, oh yeah. I said, they build any artificial wetlands? Did they do any, groundwater recharge? What all did they do? He said, well, that's all required in our development codes. And I said, so, they've mitigated pretty much all of the stormwater. No more stormwater is coming off their property, and it's not coming off any faster than it was just a blank field. So if you had a 100-acre field, and we all know when it rains hard enough, water's coming off of a blank, empty, no impervious surface field, and then you take a piece of property and you develop I think everybody acknowledges that Walmart is the largest employer in Georgia. They're people that are working at Walmart. They're generating sales tax at Walmart. The investment that they made in that particular Walmart, he said, was $25 million that got added to their tax digest. Said they spent, he acknowledged they spent over $1 million mitigating their stormwater, the issues on that piece of property. And I said, so help me out, Dr. Keller, but you're telling me that you're charging these people a stormwater fee when they've mitigated all the adverse effects of the impervious surface that they've done. They've spent millions to do that, and they're a huge infrastructure base. They're pro-jobs. They're an economic engine in your community. Something's wrong with the math. And for me, when I look at what's going on with it, I said, I could have started with this language, and I want to compliment Jeremy Ari for his hard work on this. We sat down with the EPD and looked at a lot of different things. I want to compliment the staff at EPD for their work on trying to address this. When we started off, it was simply a one-pager. Said I did come back in reference to the language that I had in the bill to address, so that for those local governments, that I said no. I want to try to make this as neutral as possible on the language on the bill that I introduced. That was the counterpart to this study resolution or Senate resolution on the study committee. Was that okay? Let's put the burden on the property owner to recertify that property every 5 years. So we got the discussion started. Said my goal was never to pass the original intent of the language of the bill that I introduced this year, but more so to get the dialogue started. And what I'm asking for with this study committee resolution is to work with our partners in local government, to work with our partners in industry, to make sure that Georgia doesn't become an anti-business friendly state with a stormwater fee that's strictly based on the amount of impervious surface that you have. When we start looking at impervious surface, that's not necessarily the enemy. That's one of those things that when you start looking at job creation in our state, you look at retail sales in our state, you look at what's going on, usually that involves impervious surface. And it doesn't correlate that impervious surface is always the bad side of what's going on with your stormwater, because there are ways to mitigate that. And the language that I had in the bill was simply to look at, hey, what's going on with that impervious surface and how are we charging those fees? What I want to do with this study committee resolution is work with our partners to try to make sure that, okay, we're not doing something that's an anti-business practice here in Georgia. I'll be glad to try to answer questions. I know kind of a little bit under the weather today, but hopefully you can follow the concept.
Well, I think we're fixing to wake up everybody. Number 18.
Thank you, Senator. I really appreciate it and share some of your same concerns. My question is, how did you come to the number? And just when I look at it, traditionally we have a few more legislators on there. So I'm not for it or against it, just in question of it. Thank you.
Well, and one of the things that as you can imagine, you see, okay, where do we want to go with the right size of a committee? Really, I depend on our legislative council and the great job that they do to try to broaden this. I do think that there'll be a lot more interested parties that will be at the table than official committee members. You know, one of the things that we heard in testimony when I heard the bill, and we had a hearing only in the Senate on the legislation, but we heard from like the Georgia Association of Water Professionals, which I'm a member, said we've heard from business and industry folks that you know have dealt with the consequences and the cost of what's going on with it, and to try to keep it to a manageable number. But I do want to make sure that as we work through the process of the study committee that we, you know, one of the organizations I had reach out to me, believe it or not, there's a Southeastern Stormwater Association. I've talked to the president they're down in Tallahassee, Florida. Said I've talked to the president there. I said, hey, yeah, we want to make sure that we're reaching out and anybody that is dealing with a stormwater issue, and that's from the private development side, that's from the business community, that's from the local governments. Said you know, when I started looking at of course, you know, initially I reached out to my partners with ACCG and GMA, and
Sure.
and I think that's just a manageable number that we came to.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 15.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, again, thank you. To follow up on that question, we were just having a sidebar discussion here ask for some clarification on the study committee composition, starting on page 25, line 25. Paragraph D, 2 members with experience in local government. E, 2 members with experience in local government. And then F and G reference private sector. Would those 2 members on paragraph D and 2 members on paragraph E be construed to be members of the legislature or members of the study committee itself? We're trying to come up with a number.
Well, and if you go back to and let me just, if I could, I'll start at the top and kind of work through it.
Sure.
Said you'll have a 12-member study committee, and one of the things you got to remember, every time you do a study committee, there's a cost involved. So one of the things that you know, if you put 100 members on the study committee, then you're having to pay a cost involved in that. So you'll have the chair of both the natural resources, said in the House and the Senate. Said then you'd want to have 2 members of the House of Representatives appointed by the Speaker. Said pardon me, I lost my train of thought there.
2 Senate and 2 House. One each is a chair.
Right.
It looks like. Okay.
Said and that discretion, I think, with the way that I read it, and I'll ask Jeremy to clarify for me, but that could be members of the legislature, or maybe not be. That's I'll ask legislative counsel, since he's here this morning, to help me with that.
Do you need a mic? Can we get you to a mic? Let him. 16. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so it would only be 4 legislative members that are required. I don't think I've ever heard of an appointment being made of a legislative member when it's talking about someone from outside that has specific expertise in an area, but I don't think that would be foreclosed. But the minimum would be the 4 that are listed in A and B, and then the rest of them are typically members from private sector as you see, or that have certain experience, and that could be really anybody as long as they meet that criteria.
Thank you. Senator, as I read the intent of your bill, I believe you're trying to be more inclusive with this piece of legislation of people impacted by the decision. And so that's why you have them on the listed on page 2.
Right, and that's where you're trying to strike a balance between the business community and the local government interest. And one of the things that, for me, it's kind of funny because I look at myself, and if we move forward with the study committee, well, I represent both. I work hard for my local governments, and I work hard for my business folks. And I would ask people to be open-minded in how we address this, because I think it's important that we come up with some plan that will address where we're going.
That's your question. All right, number 27.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, I just want to say thank you for bringing this. I know a lot of local governments are looking at implementing this fee. I know Middle Georgia, Bubba, and I are aware that Macon, Middle Georgia, I think, have the ability to do this now. And so I think it's very timely that we're looking at this, and I'm sure it's much easier to get the ground rules squared away ahead of time for many communities before they start looking at this. So thank you. I think it's a very good piece of legislation and state community to do.
I might add, there's actually 117 local governments in the state right now that are required to have MS4 permits, and out of the 117 local governments that are required to do an MS4, approximately half, or 60 of them, are charging stormwater fees. And when you start looking at the total number of local governments in the state, there's like 700 and something local governments. So we're almost to the 10% of the local governments that are charging a stormwater fee. And to me, when I saw the trend and what was going on, I just wanted to make sure that our business community, that we're not being an anti-business state, and there are ways to manage your stormwater effectively on your property. So thank you very much, Representative Stuckey.
I do not see any further questions. This is the proper time if anyone wishes to make a motion. Okay. All right. I have a motion. Is there a second? All right. Any further discussion? All right. I saw number 14. Do you waive? Okay. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. Senator, you have your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's probably the hardest you're going to work on this whole study committee, just getting through my committee, right?
Hey, just glad to be with you this morning. Thank y'all for your time.
And now you would fill out paperwork for rules. We'll do our part here. So.
Yes, ma'am. Now, carrying on this on the floor, said I'd love to have, and on both study committees, I believe somebody has to help me on the floor.
Right.
Said is there somebody that has a particular interest that would?
We can get with you later, and I'm sure some people now come up and talk to you about that. So we'll do that. We'll work with you on that. So,
thank you very much,
right,
Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any further business to discuss. So again, always pay attention to our bulletin board. Be on the lookout for any of our emails or announcements of meetings. So thank you very much. Okay, there is an announcement. What's your number? I'll let you. 18. We just have a public interest announcement.
Just for the members, there is a Sportsman's Caucus event tonight, so bullets and barbecue, I believe.
Both are fiery, right?
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Thank you.